Excited to talk today to a former coach of not one, but two Seattle Seahawks and a number of other offensive linemen in the NFL today. Dan Larson of North Dakota State, the Bison. Man, first of all, Coach, thanks for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's always a privilege to be able to talk about our former players, in this regard, and certainly excited that these two guys are going to have hopefully a chance to make an impact on the Seahawks this upcoming season.
So, Coach, you have started with the Bison as a running back coach. Do I have that right?
You do.
And then you moved into offensive line. You actually are now the offensive coordinator. You had been an offensive coordinator before, so it's kind of which hat do you like to wear the best out of all these ones you've worn so far?
Well, I could tell you about the offensive coordinator part of it after the season's over, but it was I've been doing the profession for about close to 25 years now, and offensive line was always something that can you coach a position that you've never played before? Can you coach a position you never coached before? And if there was a positive in terms of coaching through COVID, we had our former offensive line coach before us left. We only had 2 weeks to get ourselves ready to play in this COVID spring. Matt Entz was the head coach at the time, and I appreciate him because he was really the one that gave me an opportunity and believed in me that you could do it, even though you've never coached it. I jumped in with both feet, but I was really fortunate that when I jumped in, the room had as talented of players as it did. I like to think that we all made each other better kind of going through that process and growing through it all the way, Gray is from a freshman all the way to a senior. But it's exciting to say the least. And, a couple different hat changes, like you said, from a coaching standpoint, but, certainly really fortunate to be able to do it with the types of players in the program here that we have at NDSU.
Well, obviously, Seahawks fans are going to want to hear a lot about Zable and Jalen Sundell as well. Before we get there, it's not just those guys. Cody Mauk obviously has jumped in and had a really successful career, and I think you had a chance to coach him as well. Cordell Volson as well has been up there in here, and there's a number of other guys along the way. What are you guys putting in the punch up there over there in North Dakota State to get all these guys into the NFL offensive lines?
Yeah, I think a lot of we've only had 3 losing seasons here since 1965. And that stat is kind of crazy in its own right. Billy Turner kind of started this from an O-line standpoint back in 2013, going into the league. Joe Haig did it after him and there was a couple of guys that got opportunities in camps throughout that time. So it was really those guys that kind of started it. Dylan Radins came in, and I think we always had good lines, and then you just get fortunate, quite honestly, that you're willing to overlook maybe some of the shortcomings that some players have coming out of high school. They don't have maybe the size that some guys want right away, and you're just willing to believe in the process and how they get developed. And I think the one thing that all these guys had in common was they were competitive, a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. But I think they understood like they were going and playing for a program that valued offensive linemen, as good of quarterbacks and wide receivers and, whatever that we've had here. One thing that's always been the forefront of the football program that people always want to talk about is the line. And when you can go and play at a program where, that is kind of the premier position, I think it's a pretty cool deal. And especially now in today's day and age, they don't get a lot of the limelight unless they screw up. And, to play at a place where they're celebrated is a special thing.
You guys are putting folks into the NFL who are succeeding at a very high rate on the offensive line. I think part of it is you said you value offensive line, you value running the football. And in a world where a lot of teams are playing spread, you guys are rushing the ball quite a bit. Why do you think other schools, why are they so reticent to go back to kind of the old school, go back to the fundamentals, be a Smashmouth run-oriented football team?
Yeah, I don't. It's a great question, Brian. I don't. I would be probably a little bit out of my depth trying to talk about other places too much. I do know that tempo. The tempo offense has changed a little bit, right? And when you're going tempo, you can only run, maybe 3 schemes, 4 schemes, maybe at the most. And so then it's teams have some more answers for that, right? And so your answers start going to the RPO world, and so you're taking runs off the table in order to throw the football. I think the one thing we've always believed in here is that we're okay winning games in the fourth quarter. We're okay playing a style of football, huddle still, right? Time of possession. When I got here, it was taught to me, Dan, we don't talk about time of possession. We talk about time of physicality, and so that was something that was taught to me when I got here. But we're okay doing that. And so if it's a softening process, we know it might not be great in the first and second quarter. We just believe if we stay after it, there's at some point in time it's going to break in the third and the fourth quarter. And it's always been a mentality of North Dakota State, and I don't know if it's because every single coach, from the late 60s, early 70s, has always been a defensive head coach. I don't know if maybe that's the reason. But it just hasn't been like a feel like we got to go into whatever the rest of the country is doing from an offensive standpoint, stay true to who we are, what we believe in, what has won games here for the program, and just keep trying to do it better than it's ever been done before.
Well, it certainly has gotten the attention of folks, talent evaluators across the league, and kudos to you and the staff for all the work you guys are putting in there. You mentioned one little acronym you've got there, but Gray Zable said that RPO in your world stands for Run Power Often.
It does. Yes, it does. Yep.
So talk to us a little bit about the Seahawks first round pick, Gray Zable, and what they're getting in this young man.
Yeah, the ultra competitive. Just anything that you do, he's going to try to compete at the highest of levels. It doesn't matter if it's, you're at Top Golf with him. He's going to, if you're trying to hit the golf ball the farthest, he's got a pretty good golf swing. He can get the RPMs up there a little bit, but he competes at everything. And then, you just get somebody that's going to be a really team-oriented guy. He's going to he played all 5 positions for us. Talked about maybe potentially at the end of the year having to move to guard with some injuries and playing at a really high level as a senior, getting a lot of attention, from a playing left tackle standpoint. Coach, if you need me to play guard, I'll jump in there and play guard. So I see a guy that just, again, values the team. It's, like he talks about, it's a privilege to play the offensive line position. I think he's somebody that really believes in that, embodies that. And, he'll just work. And I think that's what's kind of has continued to show up. Senior Bowl, off-season workouts, whatever it is. He's a guy that just continues to crave the opportunity to get better.
Coach, I got to admit something to you. I don't watch as much North Dakota State football as I should. And I mean that.
West Coast time.
Now, I'm going to change that based on what I've seen coming out of your school. But first time I really got in-person eyes on Gray Zable was down in Mobile, Alabama, watching him at the Senior Bowl. And, I don't have to tell you what he did there. It was outstanding. It was remarkable. And so obviously I was watching him closely. I go to the combine. I talked to Gray again. I talked to Gray at Mobile. I talked to him at the combine, then watched him athletically perform the way he did in testing there. Tell me how a guy like that goes relatively unrecruited coming out of high school. How does he develop into that kind of player in the time he did at North Dakota State?
Yeah, I got asked that question earlier, and I think just part of our badge of honor here at NDSU is we'll take guys that have some competitiveness, athleticism, love football. We'll take those characteristics, and we're okay overlooking maybe what some other places would say is the shortcomings. Maybe, he's not big enough at that moment. Hey, we don't want to recruit guys that are less than 260 pounds, whatever it is. He went and was at camps and, Big 10, Big 12 schools. And, there's just something about him at that point in time that they just didn't see. He can be a laid back character. And 17 years old, I'm sure he was the most laid back guy of all time, right? And then you probably had to put a helmet and a chin strap, or get him on the basketball court, or get him out to the mound and watch him pitch to see the competitor come out. But I think that part of it, we're seeing more and more people come and recruit now the North Dakotas and the South Dakotas of the world, right? Like a place that we've had some success, that other schools at our level have had success. And so it's okay, why is that? Well, they're hardworking players. They come from backgrounds where you have to earn it. There's not a lot of things that are given or handed to these guys, and a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. And I think the one thing that's really different about him is that, Gray played 3 sports in high school. won championships in every one of those sports. And it was always a source of pride for him that he came from and played for Pierre, South Dakota. You just don't have that anymore, right? Where guys are they're prideful of their hometown team. It's the AAU team or it's a travel baseball
Mm-hmm.
team. And I think that part of it speaks really loudly to him. As long as he's with the Seahawks organization, I know he's going to take a lot of pride in helping that team win and hopefully win at a really high level.
Well, he's made an immediate impression, not only as a person, but a player. And he's credited Jalen Sundell for teaching him how to do his own laundry, among other things, when they were rooming together back at college. So, who's Jalen Sundell from your perspective? This is a guy that was an undrafted free agent for the Seahawks. Most people didn't think he was going to have a chance to make this roster last year. He makes the initial 53. He ends up backing up at tackle positions in the NFL, center, fullback, like kind of all over the place. And now is in competition to be a starting. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Be a starting. He might be a starting center for the Seahawks this year. He might play next to Zable as a possibility.
Yeah. You know, I think again, you go back to, Jaylen and, he had played guard, he had played tackle. 2019, the fall of 2020 when COVID was going on, we played one game. And right before we started this COVID spring, I started as the offensive line coach. I'd never coached O-line before. Well, we need some leadership. We need some moxie. We need some, guys that can take control of the line of scrimmage up front. And Jaylen was up to that task. We knew from a skill set standpoint he could do it. Everybody had never snapped the football before in a game. And, like he and I kind of went through it together. Like you're learning how to play center. I'm learning what it takes to coach offensive line. But Jaylen never, he welcomed the challenge of doing something different, taught himself how to play chess. Just the kid loves to learn. I think he likes the fact of someone saying you can't do something. He probably is an All-American center for us here if he doesn't have a few kind of freak injuries during his time. Well, go to his senior year, and from his standpoint, from a draft aspect of it, he probably would have been able to put together a whole healthy senior season playing center. And this guy's probably is getting drafted. Instead, best for the team is going to be playing you at left tackle. Gray's going to end up playing left guard, and then he plays right tackle. We're moving our other senior center in there. Jaylen didn't bat an eye. He went on, was an All-American tackle. He's got a lot of the same characteristics. Might not, personalities might be a little bit different, but he's got a lot of the same characteristics a lot of the other guys have had that we come through here. Selfless. Whatever you ask me to do, I'm going to do it a million miles an hour. You want me to be on the kick return team? Yeah, you got it, coach, right? Just tell me what my job is. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And I think he's one of those players that you can tell him it's not good enough and you got to do it better. And he's not going to complain. Okay, I'll go do it. And so really a special player, a guy that I probably didn't appreciate as much when I was coaching him until he leaves and you kind of understand, you see all the little things that he did. But a guy that probably is not talked about enough at NDSU in terms of tremendous players that are now trying to make it at the NFL.
We're talking to Dan Larson, offense coordinator for North Dakota State University. So the possibility that these two guys, Jalen Sundell and Zable, could end up playing together in the NFL on the same offensive line, literally next to each other.
Yeah, crazy.
How fun is that for you as a coach to kind of imagine that possibility?
Well, it is really, it is something special. It really is. And the fact that they were roommates, their personalities are a little different now, and I don't know if they've been able to figure that out. But, if anyone's, talking on the line of scrimmage, Gray will probably talk back to him, and Jaylen will probably just, kind of grunt at him a little bit, or he'll defer to Gray to go do that part of it. But, it'd be a special thing for our program for sure. And, like you said, sometimes everything just aligns for reasons, you don't know why it is, but for Gray to be able to, get a start at a place where, there's somebody that's in the town, I think that's a pretty special deal. And then, like you said, roommates played next to each other for a little, for a little bit as in the 23 season. It's been pretty cool.
Obviously I'm not going to ask you to rank your favorite kids from the school that have been programmed that have come out. But when you talk about a guy like Gray, what do you think his ceiling is? What can he become as an NFL lineman, given your experience now coaching guys that have made it to this level?
Yeah, it's going to come across as cliche. I don't know that there's a ceiling on what he can do. I think he's got a mentality that truly is, you know, no matter how the rookie year goes, it's got to be better in the second year, and the one thing I can tell you is that, and I've shared the story a few times, but he sits down before his senior year and, he's got 5 goals that he wants to accomplish as a player. 3 team goals, 2 individual goals. And we accomplish all of them. I take that back. He accomplished all of them, right? So like he's always going to be a guy who's going to try to just keep pushing himself to do it a little bit better. And I don't know that there's a ceiling for him. I think he's in a great system. I think he's surrounded by really good coaches. Seems to be an organization that's lockstep from the front office to the coaching staff. Everything that he shared about me in terms of being around and seeing it sounds like it's a slam dunk fit for him. I think he landed in a great spot to help him reach whatever his full professional potential is. But I think it's a really high ceiling. I really do.
Coach Dan Larson, North Dakota State University's offensive coordinator. Coach, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with us. Good luck in the upcoming season. Not that you'll need it, given how much success you guys continue to have.
We'll always take a little bit, so I appreciate it. And I know he'll work hard for you guys out there, and he's excited to play for the Seahawks in the 12s. And I'm looking forward to being able to cheer on from North Dakota this year, watching you guys play.
Awesome. Coach Dan Larson, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.